The smell of garlic and herbs filled the kitchen as I wiped sweat from my brow, orchestrating the chaos of a Friday night dinner service. Pots clanged, flames roared, and servers darted in and out with steaming plates of my signature dishes. This was my element, the heart of Lorenzo's, the Italian restaurant I'd built from a rundown diner into the talk of the neighborhood. Jacqueline! My mother-in-law Margaret's shrill voice cut through the kitchen's symphony. The marinara is too spicy again. I just had table 6 complain. I bit my tongue, maintaining my focus on plating the seafood risotto. The recipe hasn't changed in 5 years, Margaret. It's the same sauce that won us the city's Best Italian award last month. Well, maybe we should go back to my recipe, she huffed, hovering over my shoulder. The old customers preferred it. The old customers, right. All 12 of them who used to come to the failing restaurant before I convinced Terry to let me revamp the menu. Before I spent countless nights perfecting recipes and building relationships with local suppliers. Before I transformed this place into something special. Order up, I called out, ignoring her commentary. Table 8, 2 risottos, 1 chicken marsala. You're behind on table 12. Terry appeared through the kitchen doors, his presence adding to the tension. My husband of 15 years looked more like a businessman these days than the charming chef I'd fallen in love with in culinary school. And Mother's right about the marinara. I closed my eyes for a moment, counting to 3. I've got it under control, Terry. Why don't you handle the front of house? Someone has to, he muttered, exchanging knowing looks with his mother. The night continued its familiar dance, me cooking, them criticizing. By closing time, my feet ached and my chef's coat was stained with the day's efforts, but satisfaction warmed my chest as I counted the night's receipts. Another record-breaking Friday. We need to talk about the books, Terry said, appearing in the office doorway. His mother lingered behind him like a shadow. The numbers are great, I smiled, holding up the stack of receipts. We're up 20% from last month. That's not what I mean, Terry sighed, loosening his tie. Mother and I have been discussing the future of Lorenzo's. Margaret stepped forward, her perfectly manicured hands clasped together. The restaurant business is changing, dear. We need to think bigger. Bigger? I set down the receipts. We're doing better than ever. The food critic from the Herald is coming next week and... This isn't about your cooking, Terry interrupted. It's about business decisions, real business decisions. The way he emphasized real made my stomach clench. I handle the business decisions too, Terry. Or did you forget who negotiated our produce contracts? Who developed our catering program? That's all kitchen stuff, Margaret waved her hand dismissively. We're talking about the big picture. I think I'll stay late and finish the inventory, I said, turning back to my paperwork. I couldn't handle another lecture about my place in the restaurant. They left, but their words lingered like smoke in the air. I worked until nearly midnight, finding comfort in the routine of counting and organizing. As I prepared to leave, voices drifted from the dining room. Terry and Margaret were still here? I moved closer to the partially open door, their hushed conversation becoming clearer. The buyers want to close quickly, Terry was saying. They're offering more than we expected. My heart stopped. Good, Margaret replied. The sooner we get rid of this place, the better. We can use the money to open that sports bar franchise you've been eyeing. What about Jacqueline? Oh, Terry. Margaret's laugh was soft but cruel. She's a good cook, I'll give her that. But her place is in the kitchen, not in business meetings. She'll understand eventually. I pressed my hand against my mouth, stifling a gasp. The room spun as pieces clicked into place. The mysterious meetings, the whispered phone calls. Terry's sudden interest in the financial paperwork. They were selling my restaurant, my dream, my life's work, and they hadn't even bothered to tell me. I slid down the wall, my legs unable to hold me up anymore. The cold tile against my back was the only thing that felt real. Through the crack in the door, I could see them toasting with the expensive wine I'd selected for our anniversary celebration next week. To new beginnings, Terry said, clinking his glass against his mother's. I looked down at my hands, calloused and scarred from years of cooking, building, creating. These hands had turned a failing diner into a neighborhood gem. These hands had created the dishes that put us on the map. These hands, I realized as they curled into fists, weren't done fighting yet. Not by a long shot. I spent the weekend in a daze, mechanically going through the motions of prep work and service while my mind raced with possibilities. Maybe I'd misunderstood. Maybe there was an explanation that made sense of this betrayal. Earth to Jackie. Annika waved her hand in front of my face. My best friend and head server looked concerned. You've been staring at that sauce for 10 minutes. What's going on? Before I could answer, Terry burst through the kitchen doors, practically glowing. Everyone gather round, big announcement. The kitchen staff dropped what they were doing, forming a circle. Margaret appeared at Terry's side, beaming like she'd just won the lottery. My stomach churned. We've got amazing news, Terry announced. Lorenzo's has been acquired by the Summit Restaurant Group. They're going to transform this place into something really special. The room erupted in confused murmurs. I gripped the edge of the prep table, knuckles white. What about our jobs? Carlos, my sous chef of 3 years, asked. Summit will evaluate everyone's positions during the transition, Margaret explained smoothly. But don't worry. Good kitchen help is always needed. Kitchen help. The words hit me like a physical blow. When did this happen? I found my voice, surprisingly steady despite the rage building inside me. When were you planning to discuss this with me, Terry? The room fell silent. Terry's smile faltered slightly. Jackie, honey, let's talk about this in private. No, I stepped forward. Let's talk about it right here. When were you planning to tell your wife, the executive chef who built this restaurant's reputation, that you were selling it? Now, Jacqueline, Margaret cut in, don't make a scene. This is a business decision. A business decision? I laughed, the sound harsh and foreign. I own 30% of this restaurant. You can't sell without my signature. Terry's expression darkened. Actually, we can. Remember that paperwork you signed last month? The insurance documents? The floor seemed to drop out from under me. Those papers. I'd been in the middle of dinner service, and Terry had insisted they needed signing right away. You tricked me? My voice cracked. We did what was necessary, Margaret said firmly. You're an excellent chef, dear, but the business side of things, well, it's better left to those who understand it. Annika stepped forward, her face flushed with anger. Are you kidding me? Jackie's the reason this place is successful. That's enough, Terry snapped. The deal is done. Summit takes over next month. Anyone who wants to stay on can interview with the new management. I looked around at my staff, my family, seeing the shock and confusion on their faces. Carlos, who'd been with me since we served our first plate. Maria, whose dessert recipes had earned us write-ups in food magazines. All of them betrayed along with me. Jackie, Terry reached for my arm, but I jerked away. Be reasonable. You can keep cooking. That's what you love, right? What I loved, I said quietly, was building something of my own, something real. I untied my apron, letting it fall to the floor. But I guess that was never really mine, was it? I walked out of the kitchen, past the dining room where I'd served countless meals, past the bar where I'd celebrated our successes, and straight to my car. Annika followed, calling my name, but I couldn't stop. If I stopped, I'd fall apart. At home, I methodically packed a bag while Terry blew up my phone with messages. Each one made me angrier than the last. You're being dramatic. Think about this rationally. Mother and I know what's best. Your place is in the kitchen, not the boardroom. A knock at the door made me jump. I opened it to find Annika, holding a bottle of wine and wearing her "let's plot revenge" face. I brought reinforcements, she said, pushing past me into the house. Also, I quit. Told Terry exactly where he could stick his transition period. Despite everything, I laughed. You didn't. Oh, I did. She pulled out 2 glasses. Now we're going to drink this wine, and then we're going to figure out how to make those backstabbing snakes regret the day they underestimated you. I sank onto the couch beside her, finally letting the tears fall. They're probably right. What do I know about business? I'm just the help. Bull! Annika poured the wine with force. Who negotiated our liquor licenses? Who created our inventory system? Who turned a failing diner into the hottest reservation in town? She handed me a glass. You're not just a chef, Jackie. You're a businesswoman who happens to be brilliant in the kitchen, and I think it's time we showed them exactly what they're losing. I took a sip of wine, my mind already spinning with possibilities. Terry and Margaret thought they'd won, thought they'd put me in my place. But they'd forgotten something crucial about chefs. We know exactly how to turn up the heat. You're right, I said, a plan beginning to form. And I think I know just the person to help us serve up some karma. Rick! I called out, waving to the familiar figure at the corner table of the busy cafe. He stood up, his crisp suit and confident smile exactly as I remembered from our previous business dealings. Jackie, he grasped my hand warmly. When you called, I could hardly believe it. You never did take me up on that investment offer. Because I was building something with my husband, I said, sliding into the seat across from him. Or so I thought. Rick's expression turned serious as I laid out everything that had happened. He'd been trying to invest in Lorenzo's for years, recognizing its potential early on. I'd always declined, loyal to the family business idea. Let me get this straight, he leaned forward. They sold to Summit without telling you? Those corporate vultures who turn every restaurant into a cookie-cutter franchise? I nodded, stirring my coffee. They tricked me into signing away my rights. The deal closes in 3 weeks. Interesting timing, Rick mused, pulling out his tablet. Summit's stock has been struggling. They need this acquisition to look good to their shareholders. He smiled, a predatory gleam in his eye. Which means they can't afford any complications. What kind of complications? Well, he swiped through some documents. Summit's whole pitch is about acquiring successful, well-running establishments. What happens if Lorenzo suddenly starts struggling right before the sale closes? Annika, who'd been quietly listening, perked up. You mean like if their executive chef and half the staff suddenly quit? Exactly, Rick nodded. And if certain health code violations were anonymously reported, if their stellar reviews suddenly turned mediocre, if their books showed some concerning patterns. I won't do anything illegal, I said firmly. Nothing illegal, Rick assured me, just strategic. Summit has a clause in their contract. They can back out if the restaurant's performance drops below certain metrics before closing. Your husband and mother-in-law are counting on that final payment. What happens if it falls through? My phone buzzed. Another text from Terry. Mother and I are willing to forgive your outburst. Come back to work and we can discuss your role in the new structure. My blood boiled. Tell me more about these metrics. Over the next hour, Rick outlined a plan that was both simple and devastating. I had access to everything, the recipes, the suppliers, the staff's loyalty. I knew every strength of Lorenzo's because I'd built them. One more thing, Rick said as we wrapped up. I have a property you might be interested in, right across the street from Lorenzo's, perfect for a restaurant. My heart skipped. I can't afford... You can with investors, he interrupted. I'm not the only one who's noticed your talent, Jackie. Give me a week to put together a proposal. As if on cue, my phone lit up with a call from Chad, the restaurant critic from the Herald. I'd forgotten he was supposed to review Lorenzo's this week. Jackie, his familiar voice boomed through the speaker. Tell me it's not true. Tell me you haven't left Lorenzo's. It's complicated, Chad. Uncomplicate it. I was coming to review your food, not whatever corporate garbage Summit's going to serve up. My column's due next week. I caught Rick's eye, an idea forming. What if you did both? Review Lorenzo's now, and then again, after Summit takes over? A before and after piece? There was a pause. A comparison piece showing how corporate acquisition affects beloved local restaurants? That's actually brilliant. But what about you? Please tell me you're not leaving the industry. Actually, I glanced at Rick, who nodded encouragingly. I might have some news for you soon about a new venture. After hanging up, Annika grabbed my arm. Jackie, this is perfect. Chad's review will be the final nail in the coffin. There's just one problem, I said. Margaret's still working the front of house. She'll recognize Chad the moment he walks in. No, she won't. Annika grinned wickedly. Because I'm still in the group chat with the staff. Margaret's got a wedding to attend this weekend, 3 hours away, and Terry never works Saturday nights anymore. Rick gathered his things, looking pleased. Sounds like the pieces are falling into place. I'll start working on the investment proposal. Jackie, are you sure you're ready for this? I thought about all the times Margaret had undermined me, all the times Terry had dismissed my input as kitchen stuff. I thought about the staff who'd trusted me, the customers who'd supported us, the dreams I'd poured into every dish. They want me to stay in my place? I stood up, feeling stronger than I had in days. Fine. My place is running a successful restaurant, just not theirs. As we left the cafe, my phone buzzed one more time. A message from Margaret. Dear, I hope you're done with this tantrum. Remember, a woman's reputation in this industry is fragile. Don't burn bridges you can't rebuild. I showed the message to Annika, who snorted. Oh, bridges will burn all right, but they're the ones who lit the match. Looking up at the bright summer sky, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. For the first time since overhearing that conversation in the kitchen, I smiled. They thought they were ending my story. They didn't realize they were just setting up my comeback. The Herald's review hit like a bomb on Sunday morning. Chad had outdone himself, painting a vivid picture of Lorenzo's transformation from a neighborhood gem into a soulless corporate acquisition. The final paragraph was particularly scathing. With executive chef Jacqueline's departure and Summit Group's impending takeover, one must wonder, will Lorenzo's remain the heartbeat of authentic Italian cuisine or become another casualty of corporate standardization? Only time will tell, but this critic's recent experience suggests the heart of the restaurant left with its chef. My phone exploded with notifications. Terry called 6 times before I finally answered. What did you do? He demanded. Summit's threatening to pull out of the deal. I didn't do anything, I replied calmly. Chad reviewed the restaurant. Isn't that what you wanted? He came on the one night Mother and I weren't there, and suddenly half the staff called in sick, the wine deliveries were late, and the backup recipes were accidentally deleted from the system. I examined my nails. Sounds like management problems to me. Good thing Summit's coming to fix everything. Jackie, this isn't a game. Mother and I have already spent the first payment. We need this deal to close. I sat up straighter. You spent money you don't have yet? That doesn't sound like good business sense, Terry. The line went silent for a moment. Just come back. We can work something out. Give you a better position in the new structure. Sorry, I'm busy. Actually heading to a meeting right now. I hung up and walked into the sleek office building where Rick had arranged to meet potential investors. Annika was already there, dressed sharply and clutching a portfolio of our business plan. Ready to show them what you've got? She asked. I straightened my jacket. Born ready. The meeting room was intimidating, all glass and chrome, filled with serious-looking people in expensive suits. Rick stood at the head of the table, looking confident. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, I'm excited to present an extraordinary opportunity. Chef Jacqueline, recently featured in the Herald's Rising Stars of Cuisine, is launching a new contemporary Italian restaurant. But don't take my word for it. Taste for yourself. On cue, servers brought out samples of my signature dishes, the ones that had put Lorenzo's on the map. I'd spent all night cooking them in Rick's test kitchen. The room fell silent as they ate. One woman closed her eyes in obvious pleasure. A man in the corner actually licked his fork. The location is prime real estate, Rick continued, pulling up slides. Direct visibility from the main street and... He paused for effect. Directly across from the soon-to-be-struggling Lorenzo's. Questions flew rapid-fire. I answered each one with the confidence that came from years of running a successful restaurant, even if others hadn't acknowledged it. When I detailed my plans for modernizing traditional recipes, the woman who'd closed her eyes actually applauded. After the meeting, Rick was beaming. They're in. All of them. We can start construction next month. My phone buzzed again. A text from Carlos, my former sous chef. Summit's inspectors just left. They don't look happy. BTW, we all quit. When do you need us to start? I showed Rick the message. Looks like your complications are working. Summit's stock dropped 3 points after that review. He grinned. Their board is asking questions about the acquisition. Terry and Margaret's perfect plan is unraveling. Later that evening, I drove past Lorenzo's. Through the windows, I could see Margaret gesturing frantically at a group of people in suits, probably Summit executives. Terry sat at the bar, head in his hands. My phone rang. Margaret's number. How dare you? She hissed when I answered. Summit's cutting their offer in half. They say the restaurant's not worth what was promised. Funny how things change when the kitchen help leaves, isn't it? You ungrateful little. After everything we've done for you? I laughed. Everything you've done for me? I did everything for that restaurant. I made it what it is, and now I'm going to make something even better, without you. What are you talking about? Oh, didn't you hear? A new restaurant's opening across the street, contemporary Italian. Maybe you'll come try it sometime, if you can afford it after Summit's done with you. I hung up before she could respond, feeling lighter than I had in weeks. Through the window, I watched her face turn red as she presumably read the text I just sent, a screenshot of the signed lease for the building across the street. Annika's car pulled up beside mine. Want to go celebrate? The investors loved you. Actually, I said, I need to go kitchen shopping. We've got a restaurant to build. And a family to destroy? I shook my head, watching Terry and Margaret argue through the window. They're destroying themselves. We're just making sure we succeed while they do it. As we drove away, I caught one last glimpse of Lorenzo's in my rearview mirror. The sign that had once filled me with pride now reminded me of a valuable lesson. Success is the best revenge, but it's even sweeter when served across the street. 6 months later, I stood in the gleaming kitchen of Jacqueline's, watching my team prepare for our grand opening. The space hummed with energy as Carlos directed the line cooks through our final prep, the familiar sense of garlic and fresh herbs filling the air. "Chef," Annika called from the dining room, "the photographer from Food and Wine is here." I wiped my hands and walked out to greet him, passing under the elegant sign that bore my name. Just my name, no one else's. The dining room was a vision of modern sophistication, with warm lighting and exposed brick walls. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a perfect view of Lorenzo's across the street, where Summit's generic signage now hung limply in the afternoon sun. "This location is interesting," the photographer said, glancing across the street. "Wasn't Lorenzo's quite popular before Summit took over?" "Was it?" I smiled innocently. I hadn't noticed their reviews lately. In truth, Lorenzo's was hemorrhaging customers. Summit's standardized menu and rotating cast of inexperienced chefs had turned the once bustling restaurant into just another chain outpost. Terry had taken to drinking at the bar most nights, while Margaret desperately tried to maintain her iron grip on an increasingly empty dining room. The photo shoot was interrupted by a commotion at the front door. Speak of the devil. Terry stood there, looking disheveled in his rumpled suit. "Jackie," he called out, his voice carrying across the restaurant. "Can we talk? Please?" I excused myself from the photographer and approached my husband, soon-to-be ex-husband once the papers went through. "You're drunk, Terry." "I'm desperate," he corrected, swaying slightly. "Summit's threatening to close Lorenzo's. Mother's having anxiety attacks. The bank—" He lowered his voice. "The bank is asking questions about our mortgage." "Sounds like business problems," I said coolly. "Better left to those who understand it, right?" He flinched at his own words being thrown back at him. "I was wrong, okay? We were wrong. I see that now." His eyes roamed the restaurant, taking in the sophisticated decor, the full reservation book, the staff moving with purpose and pride. "You've built something amazing here. Again. I know." "Maybe," he stepped closer, that old charming smile appearing. "Maybe we could work something out? A partnership? I could help manage the front of house like old times." The sad thing was, part of me still loved him. Part of me remembered the young chef who'd once supported my dreams before his mother's influence and his own insecurities had poisoned everything. "Chef," Carlos called from the kitchen. "Need you to taste the special." "I have to go," I told Terry. "I have a restaurant to run." "Jackie, please." "You should leave before the dinner rush starts," I cut him off. "We're fully booked tonight. Actually, we're fully booked for the next 3 months." As if to emphasize my point, Chad from the Herald walked in, notebook in hand. His eyes lit up when he saw me. "Jackie, ready for that follow-up interview?" The response to my comparison piece was incredible. "People can't wait to hear about your new venture." Terry slunk away as I led Chad to a corner table. Through the windows, I could see Margaret standing outside Lorenzo's, watching us with a bitter expression. "So," Chad said, setting up his recorder, "tell me about the journey from Lorenzo's to Jacqueline's. It's quite a story of resilience. I glanced around my restaurant, my real restaurant, built on my terms. Actually, it's a story about knowing your worth, about not letting anyone tell you to stay in your place. The interview was interrupted by the arrival of Rick and several investors, all beaming with pride. Early numbers are exceeding projections, Rick announced. We're already talking about expansion possibilities. Expansion? Chad's eyebrows shot up. Do tell. As I outlined our future plans, I caught movement across the street. Terry was arguing with a man in a Summit corporate polo, gesturing wildly. Margaret stood in the doorway, her face pale as she watched another group of customers walk past Lorenzo's and head toward my restaurant instead. Chef, Annika appeared at my elbow. The first reservations are arriving. I excused myself and headed to the kitchen, pausing to straighten a frame on the wall. My culinary school diploma, displayed prominently where everyone could see it. Below it hung the recent review Chad had written about Lorenzo's post-summit takeover. A cautionary tale of corporate acquisition gone wrong. The kitchen doors swung open to organized chaos, exactly how I liked it. Flames leaped from skillets, fresh pasta rolled through gleaming machines, and my hand-picked team moved like a well-oiled machine. Orders are coming in, chef, Carlos grinned, handing me my apron. I tied it on, feeling the familiar weight settle around my waist. Through the kitchen window, I could see the dining room filling up with eager guests, while across the street, Lorenzo's stood nearly empty. All right, team, I called out, clapping my hands. Let's show them what we can do. The lunch rush was in full swing when Margaret stormed into Jacqueline's, her designer handbag swinging like a weapon. I watched through the kitchen window as Annika intercepted her. I'm sorry, we're fully booked, Annika said sweetly. Perhaps try across the street? I hear they have plenty of available tables. Don't play games with me, Margaret snapped. I need to speak with Jacqueline, now. I wiped my hands and stepped out of the kitchen. You can speak with me right here, Margaret. She looked around at my packed dining room, her face twisting. Summit is pulling out completely. They're terminating the contract and demanding their initial payment back. Are you happy now? You've destroyed everything. You destroyed everything, I corrected her, keeping my voice level. The moment you and Terry decided I was just the help. We were protecting you. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. You never understood the business side. Remember when you first started? You couldn't even balance the books. The memory hit hard. My first month at Lorenzo's, struggling with the accounting software while Margaret watched over my shoulder, clicking her tongue disapprovingly. But that was then. Actually, Rick's voice cut in as he approached from the bar, Jacqueline's business plan is one of the most impressive I've seen in 20 years of restaurant investment. She just needed someone to believe in her abilities outside the kitchen. Margaret's face reddened. This is family business. Stay out of it. Family, I laughed. Was it family when you tricked me into signing away my rights? When you dismissed everything I built as kitchen stuff? We need help, she said, her voice cracking. Terry's drinking too much. The bank is threatening foreclosure on our house. Just tell us what you want. Money? A share in this place? I want you to leave, I said firmly. And I want you to remember this moment the next time you think about underestimating someone. You ungrateful little, she started, but stopped as Carlos appeared with 2 steaming plates. Chef, he said, the food critic from Taste magazine would like your opinion on her dishes. I turned away from Margaret. Please see yourself out. We have paying customers to attend to. As she left, I heard her mutter, You'll regret this. Family is everything. No, I called after her. Excellence is everything. That's what you never understood. The rest of the day passed in a blur of service and success. As the dinner rush wound down, Annika found me in my office, reviewing the day's numbers. You okay? She asked. That thing with Margaret was intense. I'm fine, I said, but my hands shook slightly as I set down my tablet. Just remembering things. Want to talk about it? I stood up, walking to the window that overlooked both restaurants. Lorenzo's was dark already. They'd stopped serving dinner weeks ago. When I first married Terry, Margaret took me aside and said she'd teach me everything about running a restaurant. But every lesson was really about staying in my place. The kitchen is your domain, she'd say. Leave the important decisions to those who know better. And now look who knows better, Annika smiled. My phone buzzed, a text from Terry. Please help. I'll do anything. I deleted it without responding. Chef! Carlos burst in. You need to see this. He held up his phone, showing a local news website. The headline read, Summit Restaurant Group faces investigation over fraudulent acquisition practices. They're saying Summit knew Lorenzo's books were manipulated before the sale, Carlos explained excitedly. They were trying to hide their own financial problems with quick acquisitions. Terry and Margaret could be implicated. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I felt oddly hollow. They did it to themselves, I said quietly. Chef, one of the line cooks appeared at the door. There's a situation in the kitchen. The new sauce isn't setting right. I straightened up, pushing away the memories and regrets. Let's go fix it. In the kitchen, surrounded by the controlled chaos I loved, I felt my strength return. This was my domain, not because someone told me to stay here, but because I chose it. I'd mastered every aspect of the restaurant business, from the books to the cooking, and no one could take that away from me. Hey, Annika caught my arm as I passed. Remember what you told that journalist last week? About success being the best revenge? I nodded. Well, I think you're wrong, she grinned. Success isn't revenge at all. It's justice. Through the kitchen window, I watched my dining room full of happy customers, my competent staff, my beautiful restaurant. Across the street, Lorenzo stood as a dark reminder of what happens when you underestimate the wrong person. Order up, I called out, turning back to my kitchen. Let's show them how it's done. Ladies and gentlemen, Rick's voice carried across the packed dining room. Welcome to the official grand opening of Jacqueline's. Applause filled the space as I emerged from the kitchen, still wearing my chef's coat. The restaurant had been open for 2 months, but tonight was our formal celebration. Food critics, local celebrities, and loyal customers filled every table. Before we begin tonight's special tasting menu, Rick continued, our executive chef and owner would like to say a few words. I stepped up to the small podium, my hands trembling slightly. Through the windows, I could see Terry and Margaret standing across the street, watching. They'd received their official eviction notice from Lorenzo's that morning. Thank you all for coming, I began, my voice steady despite my nerves. Someone once told me that my place was in the kitchen, not in the boardroom. Knowing laughter rippled through the crowd, my story had become somewhat legendary in local restaurant circles. They were half right, I continued. My place is in the kitchen, and the boardroom, and anywhere else I choose to excel, because success isn't about staying in your place, it's about creating your own. More applause. I caught sight of Chad from the Herald nodding appreciatively, his pen flying across his notepad. Tonight's menu tells a story, I said. Each dish represents a step in my journey. From the appetizer, my grandmother's arancini recipe that first made me fall in love with cooking, to the dessert, a modern take on traditional tiramisu that represents where we're heading. As if on cue, the kitchen doors swung open and servers emerged with the first course. The timing was perfect, just as we'd rehearsed. But most importantly, I added, tonight celebrates the power of believing in yourself, even when others don't. Thank you to my incredible team, my loyal customers, and everyone who helped make this dream a reality. I raised my glass, and the room followed suit. Through the windows, I saw Margaret turn away, pulling a reluctant Terry with her. The evening progressed perfectly until the dessert course, when Annika rushed up to me in the kitchen. Terry's at the bar, she whispered. He's demanding to speak with you, says he won't leave until you hear him out. I found him slumped on a bar stool, looking worse than ever. His suit was wrinkled, his tie loose. You need to leave, I said firmly. Jackie, please, he slurred slightly. The bank's taking the house. Mother's moving in with my sister. Everything's falling apart. That's what happens when you build success on lies, I replied. You taught me that. I was wrong, he said, his voice breaking. I let Mother control everything. I forgot who you really were, what you could do. Look at all this. He gestured around the restaurant. You did this without me. You did it better without me. Yes, I did. Give me another chance, he pleaded. I could work here, start at the bottom, prove myself. For a moment, I remembered the young chef I'd fallen in love with. the man who'd once supported my dreams before his mother poisoned everything. But that man was gone. "No, Terry," I said gently. "You can't work here. You can't be part of this. Because you never really believed in me. You just believed in controlling me." "Jackie." "Chef," Carlos appeared at my elbow. "The food critic from Bon Appetit is asking about the inspiration behind the dessert." I turned back to Terry. "You should go. Your mother's probably waiting." "She's not," he said quietly. "She blames me for everything. Says I should have controlled you better." "Controlled me?" I laughed. "That was always the problem, wasn't it? You and Margaret were so busy trying to keep me in my place that you never noticed I'd outgrown it." Rick approached, his expression concerned. "Everything okay here?" "Terry was just leaving," I said firmly. "You'll regret this," Terry muttered, but the words held no power anymore. "No," I replied. "I only regret not doing it sooner." As security escorted him out, I returned to the dining room, where happy customers were finishing their desserts. Chad caught my eye and raised his glass in a silent toast. "Chef," Carlos called from the kitchen, "we need you for the final plating." I took one last look through the windows at Lorenzo's dark interior, remembering all the dreams I'd poured into that space. But standing in my own restaurant, surrounded by people who respected and valued me, I realized those dreams hadn't been lost. They'd just found a better home. "Coming!" I called back, turning away from the window in my past. In the kitchen, my team waited with the final dessert plates, each one a perfect representation of tradition, transformed into something new and better, just like me. "Let's finish strong," I said, picking up my plating spoon. "We've got our own legacy to build." The morning sun streamed through Jacqueline's windows as I unlocked the front door, breathing in the familiar scent of fresh bread already baking. Carlos always arrived early to start the day's prep. A movement across the street caught my eye. Workers were taking down the Lorenzo sign, leaving a blank space where my old life had once been. The local paper had reported that a boutique clothing store would be moving in. No more restaurant competition. "Morning, chef," Annika breezed in, carrying 2 coffee cups. "Did you see the email from Food and Wine?" I nodded, unable to hold back my smile. The magazine had named Jacqueline's one of the top 10 new restaurants in America. The photo shoot was scheduled for next week. "Have you heard from Terry or Margaret?" she asked carefully. "Terry's sister called yesterday," I said, accepting the coffee. "Apparently, Margaret's driving her crazy, reorganizing her entire house and criticizing her cooking. Terry's staying with a friend, looking for work in another city." "Good riddance," Annika muttered. The kitchen doors swung open, and Carlos emerged with a fresh croissant. "Chef, you need to taste this new recipe. I think I've perfected the butter-to-dough ratio." As I bit into the perfectly flaky pastry, the front door chimed. Rick walked in, followed by an elegant woman I recognized from restaurant magazine covers, Diana, the famous restaurateur who owned venues across the country. "Jackie," Rick beamed, "Diana's been very interested in our success here." "Please," Diana held up her hand, "let me speak for myself." She turned to me, her eyes sharp and appraising. "I've been watching you, Jacqueline. The way you handled the Lorenzo situation, the way you built this place, it's impressive." "Thank you," I said cautiously. "I'm not here to buy you out," she smiled, reading my expression. "I'm here to propose a partnership, your recipes, your management style, your vision, but with the resources to expand. Multiple locations, each one unique, each one reflecting its community while maintaining your standards." Rick nodded encouragingly. "I've reviewed the proposal. It's solid, Jackie. You'd maintain creative control." "And who would run this location?" I asked. "You would," Diana replied. "This would be the flagship. I don't want to change what works. I want to help it grow." Before I could respond, the door chimed again. Margaret stood there, looking smaller somehow without her designer clothes and perfect makeup. "I need to speak with you," she said quietly. Diana raised an eyebrow. "Should we give you a moment?" "No," I said firmly. "Whatever she has to say, she can say in front of everyone." Margaret stepped forward, clutching her worn purse. "I came to apologize. I was wrong about you, about everything. A bit late for that, isn't it?" "Yes," she admitted, but I wanted you to know. Seeing what you've built here, how everyone respects you. I understand now what I tried to destroy, what I tried to keep Terry from seeing. And what's that? That you were never just the help, she said, her voice cracking. You were the heart, the vision, everything we pretended to be but weren't. I let her words hang in the air for a moment, then turned to Diana. Tell me more about this partnership. Margaret took the hint and left quietly, the door closing softly behind her. Diana smiled and pulled out a folder. Let's talk details. As we sat discussing expansion plans and creative control, I watched my staff prepare for the day. Carlos training a new line cook, Annika arranging the dining room with perfect precision, Rick adding his business insights to Diana's proposal. This was my real family. People who believed in excellence over control, support over suppression. One more thing, Diana said, sliding a final document across the table. We'll need a new name for the restaurant group. She tapped the proposed logo, Jacqueline's Restaurant Group, where vision meets tradition. Perfect, I smiled, picking up the pen. The door chimed one final time. A young woman in chef's whites stood nervously in the entrance. Can I help you? I asked. I'm here about the apprenticeship program, she said. The one for aspiring female chefs? My mother says I should stick to serving, but you want more, I finished for her. She nodded eagerly. I glanced at the empty space across the street where Lorenzo's sign had been, then back at this young chef with dreams in her eyes. Come on back to the kitchen, I said, standing up. Let's see what you can do. As I led her through my restaurant, my empire in the making, I caught my reflection in the polished surfaces. I saw not just a chef, not just a businesswoman, but someone who had refused to stay in her place. And now I could help others do the same. First lesson, I told my new apprentice, handing her an apron. Success isn't about fitting into someone else's kitchen, it's about building your own.